Good morning and welcome to this Wednesday, February 7th, 9:30 a.m. joint committee hearing between the Hawaii State Senate Committees on Commerce and Consumer Protection and Energy, Economic Development and Tourism to hear SB 3234 relating to the stabilization of property insurance. This is a significant bill. I'd like to thank my colleagues for making morning time to join us for this joint hearing. The SB 3234 amends the laws relating to the Hawaii Hurricane Relief Fund and the Hawaii Property Insurance Association, reinstates several fees, and mandates HPIA member insurers to recoup assessment costs in order to try and address the hurricane insurance market issue that we are contending with locally. As is our normal practice, we have a 2-minute, we ask that testifiers observe a 2-minute testimony time limit. Please, I would please recommend that instead of reading verbatim, word for word, your testimony, which we've already received in writing and reviewed, use your time, if you'd like, to elaborate or clarify issues you've contained in your written testimony, or to facilitate the process a little more expeditiously, you can stand on your testimony and make yourself available for questions. And I'd like to, again, thank the members of the community who have observed our pilot procedures and submitted their testimony 48 hours early. It was very helpful. Okay, first testifier is the DCCA Insurance Division offering comments. Good morning, Gordon.
Good morning, chairs, members of the committees. Gordon Ito testifying on behalf of DCCA. I'll stand on my written testimony offering comments, but in reality, we are very supportive of this bill. We're in a very extremely bad insurance market, a very hard market. Availability is becoming a problem. Pricing has, the premiums have gone up significantly. And we do need a bill like this, and I thank Chair Gil Colway's leadership in working on this bill, participating in it. But this is really a bill that would provide some relief, hopefully, in the condo area, condominiums, where there is an availability issue arising. But it also provides, a potential backstop to our hard market if it further deteriorates. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority, Gwen Yamamoto Lau, in support. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and the members of the committee. Gwen Yamamoto Lau, Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority, standing on my testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Department of Taxation offering comments. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Garrison Kurth, Department of Taxation. You have a written testimony which we stand on providing comments on administration, and I'm available for comments.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Insurers Council, in support. Good morning.
Good morning. Chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. Sort of echoing what Commissioner Ito said, our market right now is sort of in a fragile state. So making these backstops available for consumers and for condo owners and for condo associations of apartment owners, I think is really critical. Hopefully we don't need it, and hopefully the market stabilizes, but it just doesn't look like that's the case right now. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Bankers Association, in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Tiffany Adua, on behalf of the Hawaii Bankers Association, we stand on our testimony in support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony in support. For State Farm, Matt Sujimura with comments. Thank you very much. Let me see. Stephanie Sakamoto in support.
We'll stand on our testimony in support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony. That's all the registered testimony we have by individuals who indicated they would be present for the hearing. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room who would like to testify?
Thank you. Lindsay Garcia, Realtors. We support the intent of the bill, but we offer comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have you recorded with written testimony. Is there anyone else? Okay, in total, we received 11 pieces of testimony in support and 5 offering comments. Members, any questions?
I have,
Vice Chair.
thank you. Maybe for Insurance Division, Mr. Ito, followed by Insurers Council. And this is, I strongly support the intent of the bill. I guess some of my questions are based upon the references to the poor conditions associated with condominium maintenance. And I'm kind of interested in finding out if there are specific reports or documentation, that you derived, I guess, as part of your working group, that you can point to that would help us review, some of the background on which your comments are based.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Senate for SCR 48, which is requesting for the Insurance Division as well as the Real Estate Commission to look at the condominium association. So there is a study and a report that has been issued for SCR 48, and it's available on the DCCA website. At least from the insurance perspective with respect to condominiums, right now, for the individual unit owners, there is still availability. The prices are going up. The significant problem that's occurring is really on the condominium associations and the master policy. For older condos, there's been significant increases in water losses due to the aging infrastructure, like the water pipes and the sewer pipes, which is caused pause by the insurance industry to whether they want to cover that risk or not. And so that's starting to occur with respect to availability. Pricing for the AOAO policies have gone up tremendously. I mean, there are many condos that are not buying full coverages on their building for the master policies, which is then starting to have a trickle-down effect on the real estate and the financial industry. So what's happening for condos that are not buying full coverage, Freddie and Fannie are not buying the loans for units within those buildings, from my understanding. And therefore, the financial institutions in Hawaii are reluctant, or even on the mainland are reluctant to issue loans on those units, which is then having an impact on the real estate market, where unit owners or purchasers or buyers of units in that are being impacted on the ability to, if they want to take a mortgage out, the ability to get a loan on purchasing those units. So it's starting to have a trickle-down effect. Similar, not as bad as what happened after Hurricane Iniki in 1992 and 93, in particular when the hurricane market, basically pre-Iniki and pre-Andrew, your homeowner's policy contained coverages not only for your fire liability risks, property damage risk, but also hurricane coverage. So in 1992, that was split out, right? And so after Iniki was a significant impact on the entire Hawaii economy, where you couldn't buy insurance. I remember when I started in 93, I had to write rules. It had an impact even on motor vehicle, because a lot of times insurers bundle their policies with home and motor vehicle, and you get a discount. So people couldn't even buy motor vehicle insurance back in 93. And so we're starting to see the beginning of that kind of trickle-down effect on the condos, which we're very concerned about and we're trying to address. And this bill helps making steps to stabilize the market.
And I agree with Commissioner Ito. I was actually here in 93 and was involved in enacting the HHRF way back in the day. And it was because the market basically went away. We are not there yet, but the concern is that we're getting there. What I can tell you, and this is for my company, Island Insurance, 83% of our losses for condo unit owners are water damage. Generally, it's pipes in the wall. It could also be somebody clogging a toilet. And the problem with water is if it's on the 30th floor, it's going to go down 15 floors, 20 floors. So you get this cascade of damage. And this has really accelerated in the last 6 or 7 years as these buildings have aged, but the infrastructure has not been repaired, particularly the plumbing infrastructure. So the idea is that these programs will be there if needed, especially for older buildings. We have had evidence that some newer buildings have had problems as well. One of the new Howard Hughes projects had massive water damage losses. And while I don't know that this bill is really intended to address that particular subcategory, you sort of imagine what it's going to look like in 20 or 30 years. So I think condos are a really big part of what we need to put in affordable housing in our community, and anything we can do now to have insurance mechanisms in place, as well as other things you folks I know have worked on to make the association of apartment owners better at fixing their buildings will only help us in the long run.
I guess, from the standpoint of the older buildings that are covered by the city's mandatory fire sprinkler ordinance, that would seem to add another additional burden on those particular properties, because apart from normal water damage, from plumbing systems, the city's ordinance also adds a very aggressive timetable. So if, associations can't afford to do the major, plumbing system upgrades, they're doing their life safety evaluations, et cetera, they're incurring additional costs. And they're also being categorized as associations and properties that are increasingly becoming ineligible for insurance coverage as well as financing. So has either of your organizations taken a look at the extent to which perhaps the city requirement is making things worse, and maybe we should sort of step back and really look at state regulation, in terms of financing and insurance as being the better approaches to help address, the fire safety needs?
So, with respect to the water sprinkler, I mean, that's a city and county ordinance, and really that's a policy decision on the city and county. Before, and bear your indulgence, we're talking about condo insurance, right? And the losses particularly in the older building. But the Hawaii's market, when I say hard market, where availability is becoming very slim in certain areas, it's impacting not only the condominiums, but everybody, right? In the homeowners line, motor vehicle lines. And there's primary causes for that. One is because of the catastrophic losses, worldwide, even nationwide, the hurricanes, tornadoes, hail losses, Hawaii, unfortunately, with the wildfire, the reinsurance rates have gone up tremendously. I mean, reinsurance is what insurance companies to buy to cede some of their risk off their books. That rates have gone up on the last 3 years, probably annually between 20 to 60% a year. And that's causing a large increase in the premiums. Inflation, supply chain issues, cost of rebuilding is also having an impact on insurance rates. The water losses, and there's a number of reasons that's driving really what's happening in the market, not only in Hawaii but nationwide. So I just wanted to point out that fact. The most important thing that I think we really got to address in insurance. The two levers of insurance is frequency and severity. If we can reduce frequency of accidental losses and severity of losses, that helps bring down insurance rates, right? So when you talk about condo and the water losses, right? I mean, we can try to address to a limited extent the premiums, but we need to really address the losses, right? And try to stop those kind of losses. Because if the losses continue to increase, right, the losses on insurance is going to continue to increase. So we need to really look in any insurance line, we need to always look at what can we do to address frequency and severity and bring that down. Right? So going back to your thing, yes, it is an added cost to the condominiums with fire sprinkler installation and the fire safety part. But it also, I mean, I feel so bad for the condos that have inadequate reserves to do the replacement of the pipes. But somehow we need to get those items that causing the huge losses, fixed and resolved. Because if not, we're gonna keep adding number of buildings that are continue to increase losses due to water loss, right? And so that's something I think, I'm hoping the legislature, everybody works and takes a look at finding solutions to address the problems that are causing the increase in frequency and severity.
Well, I think this bill is a first step.
Yeah, and then as Commissioner said, so if our organization really, we don't get involved in the public policy of requiring sprinklers. I do know that there are some other bills pending before the legislature that would offer lower cost financing. And I
Yes.
think that's going to be one of the keys, because if there is going to be a sprinkler mandate and you need to repipe the building, it strikes me that doing it at the same time makes the most sense instead of ripping, plumbing apart multiple times. But yeah, that's our response.
Chair DeCoy.
Thank you.
Okay, are there, I guess for either of you or both of you or whoever else can answer, there's a lot of math that still needs to be worked out. I'm wondering if there have been any changes in the numbers or any more, if we've been able to narrow down a little bit of the scope on this compared to when some of the initial industry meetings were convened in the fall and the winter. Do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, we've done just a little bit of work on it subsequently, and if we look at the older buildings specifically, given that their values are substantially lower, the total number is really, really rough terms. If it's 400 buildings, probably in the $30 to $40 billion range. And we were chatting with Commissioner about this before the meeting. In terms of the exposure that would be absorbed by one of these programs, whether it's HPIA for non-hurricane or HHRF for hurricane, there's the ability to buy reinsurance for a large part of it. So the exposure won't be completely borne by the organizations, because that's a real key. We don't want to overload them with so much exposure that they fail if there's a single event. And I think in discussions we've had with reinsurance brokers, there is that capability in the market today.
But the higher end scope, we've started to narrow down that number. And you think it's reasonably not higher than?
40 billion to 50 billion tops.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we are prepared to make recommendations, and given the nature of this discussion and the testimony that's been submitted, there are multiple pieces multiple parts to this measure that we still need to work out. So we would like to try and work with the stakeholders to narrow those issues down as quickly as possible before making a recommendation and moving this measure on. So the recommendation is to defer decision-making on this measure until Tuesday, February 13th, right? Let me see. Tuesday is the 13th, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday, February 13th at 9:30 a.m. in this room 229. So on that note, we will adjourn that joint agenda. Okay, good morning and welcome. This is our Wednesday, February 7th, 9:35 a.m. Joint committee hearing. This is our 9:35 agenda and 229 on SB 3230 relating to insurance. This is the Senate Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection, joined by our Senate Committee on Public Safety and Intergovernmental and Military Affairs. First up on this measure is the DCCA in opposition. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Kehokola and Chair Wakai, members of the committee, coordinator testifying. So we stand on a written testimony regarding the rate making. what this bill would do was really deviate substantially from what is done normally in reviewing rates and using loss data, historical loss data, and using modeling. I understand the concern that's raised, especially with the Maui wildfire, but with the Maui wildfire, I mean, we view it as what we call a wild swan event, one unlikely to occur in the near future, which would not have, by taking that position, it would not have as much of an impact on the rates as people fear it would be. And so we feel this bill is not necessary, and we'll continue to do our regular rate review. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. AARP Hawaii in support. Hawaii Insurers Council in opposition. Good morning.
Morning. Chair Keoho Kolole, Vice Chair Fukunaga, members of the committee, Chair Wakai. A lot of chairs and vice chairs today. I'm Mike Onofrietti, representing Hawaii Insurers Council. I'm also an actuary, and the rate-making part of this bill, it would make it virtually impossible for us to calculate rates in Hawaii for all but hurricane losses, because that's where there are catastrophe models. There are no models for, even in Hawaii, wildfire. There are no models for slips and falls and general liability, or workplace injuries and workers' comp. So we'd have really no foundation with which to make rates. And that's obviously a concern. On some of the coverage things in the bill, there are some implicit assumptions that every insurer has some of the same types of policies that are referenced in the legislation. So for example, there's a thing that talks about 12 or 24 months of additional living expense if your home cannot be occupied. Well, insurers that use a very common form from the Insurance Services Office, they have a dollar limit. So there's not a number of months limit, it's just however many dollars are available to pay the claim. So we were also opposing that section of the bill. It would make some fundamental changes that would make writing a homeowner's policy as it exists today untenable for many insurers. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Association for Justice with comments. State Farm in opposition. Thank you very much for standing on your testimony. The American Property Casualty Insurance Association, Annie Makapagal, opposition. Good morning.
Good morning. Chair Annie Makapagal on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We respectfully oppose this bill, this measure, along with what others have indicated before me. Specifically, the definition of replacement cost with a policy with guaranteed replacement cost essentially eliminates coverage limits. And yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to add, but respectfully oppose the measure. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. That's all the testimony we've received from individuals who indicated they would be present. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, questions? Senator Rhodes.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the gentleman's name who said that this was a wild swan event. Can you come back up?
Mr. Ito.
Ito, I'm
Insurance
sorry,
Commissioner.
my apologies. I guess, but isn't sort of the point of the global climate change that the black swan events, I mean, the models have been predicting for decades that the kind of thing that happened in Maui is exactly what we should expect more of, which I understand makes rate making very difficult because it may be that we can't really use the baseline that we've had for the last, hundreds of years since there's been insurance. But don't we need to address the fact that that things are changing?
The short answer, Senator, is yes. I mean, with respect to climate change, global warming, the change in, we all have to look at it and recognize the fact and address it. I mean, it's a challenge that we're all facing. Just looking at Florida, for example, right, or even the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic in hurricanes. I mean, in my mind, it's mind-boggling to see Some of even the weather models in terms of the last few years where they predict the intensification from a category 1 to maybe a 3. But in reality, it goes from a category 1 to a category 4 or 5 overnight. I mean, that I think is really impacted because of the warming of the atmosphere, having more moisture in the air, more energy, and the rapid intensification. I mean, that's something that we all have to look at. But with respect to the wildfire, right, I'm trying to convince the industry in part that it was a convergence of various factors. Yes, we had the drought. Yes, we have the high winds, but it's not an event that's likely to occur year after year. Right? And that's what really the wild swan event is. It's discounting or taking out the fact that it's not an event that's likely to occur year after year in a risk. And so therefore, we try to exclude that as a load in terms of rate making. So that's.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I certainly hope you're right, but I'm not sure all the evidence points in that direction.
Yeah, but let me just, and I appreciate that really, Senator, because going back to the thing about mitigation and addressing frequency and severity, I'm not suggesting that we don't do anything, right? I mean, we need to mitigate risk. Like wildfire risk, on one hand, it's very positive to hear that communities are engaging in and looking at reducing risk. We have to continue that momentum. We have to encourage homeowners, especially in those that are subject to wildfire risk, to see what they can do to be proactive and mitigate risk. Right? That miracle home in Lahaina, there were reasons why it didn't burn. We should really start looking at what can we do to mitigate risk, not only wildfire, but hurricane and other things. We've been in contact with Alabama. They have their program in risk mitigation. They get about, I think, $20 million a year to help strengthen their homes and things like that. So it's really good to hear the legislature taking proactive steps. There's many bills encouraging mitigation. We've got to continue that, and I highly encourage everyone to do that.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairs.
Members, any other questions?
Yeah, Chair.
We'll go Senator Elefante, followed by Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ito, are you familiar with any other states that have a wildfire model risk program?
There might be some wildfire models from California or some other states that have had wildfire, unfortunately, for a number of years.
And as a follow-up to that, has your office taken a look at that to explore or do research?
No, in terms of creating a wildfire model or risk, I mean, I think in some of the testimonies for upcoming bill, I know there's the effort in terms of creating a statewide fire marshal. I think that would be in the purview of the state fire marshal to really look at the wildfire risk in Hawaii and see what can be done to address it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Richards?
Thank you. A gentleman from First Insurance.
So, point of clarity, island insurance.
Island Insurance, sorry about
Senator, I
that.
get in trouble.
No, okay.
Mike.
My bad. Okay, so if I read this right, if this were to pass, you would not be allowed to use history or other data points to create a premium. What would you use?
So there's a thing in many statutes that allows for the use of actuarial judgment. So that would end up being a fair bit of what would need to be included. And the challenge for me as an actuary and for the regulator is my judgment right, wrong, or indifferent? It gets really, really tricky. I actually don't know exactly what I would use. So, if we're going to continue to do business in the state, we'd have to figure out something. But it's kind of tricky. And to kind of address the conversation about wildfire models, I've actually had conversations with reinsurance brokers to see, will some of the modeling companies that built those models in the Pacific Northwest and California build one for Hawaii? What I've heard so far is there's not enough money in it for the modeling companies. So that means we're left to our own devices in Hawaii to figure out if there's something we can build In addition to using empirical information like the Hawaii Wildfire Management Office's maps, combined with wind vectors and other things that really caused the tragedy in Lahaina. But that's, we don't have that big modeling company going to step in and save us on this one, it looks like.
Okay, so what I heard was, don't know, when it comes down to it. Okay.
Let me follow on to that. Mike, my understanding, and this might be an overgeneralization, Gordon, you're free to weigh in as well, but my understanding is that part of what is happening with the tightening in the reinsurance market globally is that everybody's throwing out their models because none of them are good anymore. And it's going to take probably several years, if at all, for the industry to develop new models that provide whatever the appropriate amount of certainty is for this market to turn around.
That's actually a true statement. So there's an old statement in a phrase in modeling that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Hurricane Iniki in '93 was actually the advent of hurricane modeling. And it was really Hurricane Andrew that occurred 11 days before Iniki that triggered that. And what happened was those initial models weren't very good, but now we're 30 years in and they're on version 21, I think, of one of the models. So they keep iterating them to make them better. It took a few years and companies started saying, all right, we have a model, we have something we can at least rely upon. A model will never give you certainty. A model will give you directionality. And we'll give you some instances of what's the kind of worst case scenarios, that sort of thing. I think that there are other things that community can do. Commissioner kind of referred to some of them, which is holistically for communities that put in fire breaks, that, what is it, FireWise, I think, FireWise communities. Those things will help bring the market back, even in the absence of detailed modeling, because there is some evidence that that will work. I wish I could give a definitive answer. Unfortunately, I cannot.
And just to chime in, the way we look at models, I mean, we view it as a tool, as kind of Mike had referred to. I mean, we look at the models and see what is really the risk, what is the range of the risk. But we do not use it solely as the basis of approving rates. I mean, really loss data is the one that historically we either look at a 3 to 5 year average. So even with the wildfire, again, we don't load everything, front load everything all at once. We spread out that average losses.
Senator McKelvey?
I was going to jump in. I mean, you said in California, this is taken off of California, right? You said that there's a company that could do this map, but they said there's not enough money for them to come in and to do this modeling, right? Correct?
I heard that from a reinsurance broker.
So could we theoretically, if it were to happen, fund the commissioner's office to have this company do this model for Hawaii?
I would defer to Commissioner. I have no idea.
Because that's kind of also the thrust of this bill too, Commissioner, is that in California, their insurance commissioner seems to have advocacy roles. They're the ones who brought these things to regulators into the legislature over there, right? And so my question is, what if we were to go that route? What would you say about that? It would be a tool to help everybody, right, including your office?
Well, when you talk about models, I mean, just to make a distinction, right? I mean, it's if you're looking at the insurance model, like for the hurricane, like air, and there's several entities that come up with their own models and they sell the use of the models to insurers and reinsurers, right? So the way there's two models when you say model, I mean, you have one model to kind of gather what available data we have with respect to drought-prone areas, climate information, and come up with a model that identifies areas of risk, physical risk, right, that we can take proactive steps. But if you talk about insurance models, that's other thing. I mean, that also includes data in terms of type of construction of buildings, where is it within that risk profile for wildfires. And then you get a pricing in terms of if a fire occurs in this area, what's the probability of that occurring and what's the extent of loss. So yes, I mean, if we were looking at an insurance model, if we had the funding, we could try to hire a firm to do a model, an insurance model.
Yes, understand. Okay. Thank you, Chair, I appreciate you.
So to follow up on that, now I don't understand what type of model we would get. We would ask you to procure if we gave you the money to procure it, because, I mean, it seems like there's maybe a wildfire model that we would need to do, but then shouldn't we also do a hurricane model, or should we just have you procure a catastrophic wild swan model?
Well,
I mean, if there is advantage to be had from doing a Hawaii-specific model, what are we modeling for that gives us the most usefulness out of it?
well, personally, I would say having a model created just to identify physical risks is the starting point. And so that we can identify potential risks with respect to areas that are prone and things that we can move towards mitigation. I mean, that's just my personal. As far as trying to develop an insurance model, it's going to be extremely expensive, and it'll take a while to, I think, to get that model in place.
How is it different from, in my head, what would be like a catastrophic risk model?
I think if you,
I don't know what you mean by a physical risk model.
so just identifying areas based on the data that is in Hawaii, or gathering data like there's drought maps that frequently see occur, right? And so combining that with the weather forecast, what areas are prone in the next 5-10 years likely to have higher risk for drought and potential wildfire risks. I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll recess for decision making. Okay, good morning. Reconvening on this 9:35 a.m. agenda regarding SB 3230. After conferring with the chair and the members, the recommendation is to pass this measure out with amendments. We will, essentially, remove the provisions that exist in the bill right now, and we will insert a direct appropriation to the DCCA's insurance office of a blank appropriation. Will note a recommended amount of $300,000 to procure expertise to develop a physical risk model to gauge risk in the state of Hawaii. And we will recommend in the measure that the DCCA work with the University of Hawaii to procure appropriate expertise to develop the model. And we'll defect the effective date to July 1, 2040. Members, any discussion?
Just maybe the language that you're thinking of would already cover this, but it's related to insurance, so probably.
And we will insert provisions in the measure to, well, I guess with your indulgence.
That maybe the study should be for the purpose of setting insurance rates or something, just to tie it back into the title.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Thank you. And we will tie in the purpose of the development of the model that it should be utilized for insurance rate making and regulatory purposes. Any discussion? Any other discussion? Senator Elefante.
Yeah, point of clarification, Chair. So in terms of eliminating the provisions, it's
Yes.
all the provisions that the Insurance Council and Insurance Office had concerns with?
Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank
So
you.
it's just going to be an appropriation to develop this risk model. Yeah. Okay, if there are no other comments.
Well, just, if I may.
Yes, Senator.
No, I appreciate you moving the measure along with that, because, I mean, a lot of this was taken from California. My only concern is we still have an ALE cliff coming up next August. We're not going to be in session. So I'm hoping there are other vehicles and other ways we can continue discussion with the Insurance Commissioner and others, because at the rate we're going, there's a good reality. Many people aren't going to be in a position to be able to not continue to have that available. So with the rental market the way it is, it's a huge, huge concern. But thank you so much for letting me express that, Chair.
Thank you, and so noted. And just so the insurers know, we will be continuing that discussion in this committee as we go forward. Okay, any other comments or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, passing with amendments, Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Senator McKelvey?
Sorry, yes.
Senator Richards?
Aye.
Senator Awa is excused. Measure is adopted.
For members of PSM, same recommendation, pass the measure with the amendments stated. Any discussion? If not, Senator Elafante, I vote yes.
Okay, Chair's recommendations to pass SB 3230 with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Fukunaga.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Awa is excused. Mr. Chair, recommendations adopted.
All right, we are adjourned. Good morning and welcome to our Senate Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection 9:40 a.m. February 7th, 2024 hearing in Conference Room 229 to discuss a number of CPN measures. The first is SB 3229 relating to insurance. This measure requires the Insurance Commissioner to establish a program to investigate complaints, respond to inquiries, and bring enforcement actions against insurers. First up for the DCCA, testifying for the state of Hawaii is the DCCA in opposition. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Gordon Ito, testifying on behalf of DCCA Insurance Division. We stand on our written testimony opposing this measure. Basically, what's described in here and creating kind of an advocacy investigation process, we already do that in the division. We do investigate complaints. I mean, we receive complaints, we handle customers' inquiries. If it rises to the complaint, what normally happens is we send out the complaint for response to insurers. They're required to respond within 15 days. At the back of my testimony, I noted that in 2022, the recovery that as really, I view it as advocacy on the behalf of the consumer. If the consumer does not receive a fair shake or feel is not receiving a fair, we intervene based on the complaint. And if we do feel that the consumer is not receiving a fair shake, then that's where we help with assisting additional recovery fund insurers. So we do take that position, and from year to year, we vary in terms of recovery. Some years we recover over $1 million on behalf of consumers based on complaints. If you look at our commissioner's report that's on our website, you can see what we do. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Insurers Council in opposition.
Good morning, Michael Kanoe, counsel for HIC, standing on testimony.
Thank you for standing on your testimony. We also have the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, Hawaii in opposition, and NAMIC offering comments. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Members, any questions? Okay, we'll move to the next measure, SB 2913, relating to travel insurance. This establishes a framework to regulate the sale of travel insurance in the state. First up, DCCA offering comments.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. We stand on written testimony. We just offer comments in terms of some of the existing laws and maybe amendments that may need to be made with respect to if there's an adoption of this travel insurance model. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Duke DeHaas testifying for Alliance in support. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in front of you on travel insurance and spending some of your legislative bandwidth on it. I know you have a lot of important issues to deal with, so thank you again for the opportunity. I'm here in Richmond, Virginia, Deputy General Counsel for Allianz Travel Insurance Subsidiary, and also co-chair of the USTIA, or U.S. Travel Insurance Association Law and Reg Committee. Stand on our testimony essentially in support of this model. This is an NASC model that Hawaii and 38 other states voted for back in 2018. Happy to work with the division on any technical changes they believe are necessary. This has been adopted already in 35 states. It provides a robust regulatory framework for travel insurance and provides a number of consumer protections and other safeguards and guardrails. Travel insurance being, it's very important for it to be uniform as much as possible as folks travel from all over the country, families and otherwise, and this would help establish that regulatory framework in Hawaii. Thank you again for the opportunity and happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. We also have submitted written testimony from the Hawaii Insurers Council, the U.S. Travel Insurance Association, and American Property Casualty Insurance Association, and Crum and Forster, all in support. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this measure? Members' questions? Okay, we will move on to SB 3337, relating to appraisal management companies. This measure reestablishes the appraisal management company registration program within the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. We heard a similar measure last week. DCCA with comments.
Shelley Choi, DCCA, would just like to stand on our written testimony offering comments.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Realtors in support. Hawaii Bankers Association in support.
Stand in support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony. The Hawaii Financial Services Association in support. Mark Schiffman of REVAA in support. Oh, go ahead, Marvin. We have we have you online.
Mahalo, Senator. Very briefly, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Let me get to page 3 of the testimony. There are currently 3 appraisal management company legislation going through the session. As the chair noted, Senate Bill 2728 was heard on January the 31st. It has an effective date that we had discussed at the hearing of September 30th, 2024. At our request, there is no retroactive provision in the bill that is going to be in the Senate Draft 1. So this bill has not yet been reported out of committee. The second bill is House Bill 2641. That and the bill today, Senate Bill 3337, are companion bills. That House bill was triple referred. It was heard on February 2nd by the Labor and Government Operations Committee, and it passed out yesterday. It has all of the amendments we proposed. The amendments we proposed were to align that House bill with Senate Bill 2728 and the proposed amendments that your committee had passed. So today's bill, that House bill deleted retroactivity, among other things, and has an effective date of September 30th, 2024. So in view of all of that, our proposed amendments in this bill would align this bill 3337 with the other 2 bills. We ask for your consideration. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next we have Mr. Schiffman online. Please proceed.
Yeah, good morning, Senators. Thank you for hearing our bill, sharing the sentiments that Marvin just discussed with you. We are supportive of SB 3337, just as we were with Senate Bill 2728 and House Bill 2641. We encourage passage with the amendments that Marvin has listed and stand by our testimony. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We also have written testimony submitted both in support from David Murphy and Colleen McCafferty. Are there any other individuals who would like to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Vice Chair.
For DCCA, in I guess the proposed amendments offered by Hawaii Financial Services Association, they're calling for an appropriation clause. I just wondered what amount your department would need to fulfill the reestablishment of this program.
I'm actually not sure. I could consult with our budget department and return those numbers to you later. I don't know off the top of my head at this time.
Okay, at this point, since the program was in existence before, you haven't lost staff, is it your expectation that the department would not need any additional funding to reinstate the program?
So I'm not an expert on the functions of our budget and staffing, but I don't believe we would need additional, but we would need whatever we would normally have received had the program not been repealed.
Okay, well, I guess we can follow up with the department. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 3331, relating to the landlord-tenant code. This measure establishes an alternative process for the termination of the rental agreement that involves mediation. First up, the Attorney General's office with comments. Good morning.
Good morning, Deputy Attorney General Christopher Hahn with comments on the bill. As noted in our written testimony, we do have concerns with the potential subject title issue and the use of the phrase final eviction moratorium. We've proposed some amendments to try to address these issues. However, we still have concerns with the bill in terms of how it's going to interact with the proclamation. Thank you, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you very much. The Judiciary, State of Hawaii, Mr. Crabtree, in support. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Jeffrey Crabtree, Chair, Vice Chair. Judiciary will stand on its written testimony. Just one brief focus area I want to emphasize. The data in Hawaii is really good that when you get landlords and tenants together early in the process, there's a substantial benefit from that. If you wait until the landlord goes to court, has to hire attorneys, has to pay court costs, positions start to harden, feelings start to harden, and just gets harder to resolve things. It's not a magic bullet, but a substantial number of cases are resolved through a program like this. So just ask you to consider that. Thank you very much. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Mediation Center of the Pacific, in support.
Good morning, Senators. Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity. We stand in support of our testimony. I would like to add that there have been some suggestions to the concerns of the AG's office, some recommended language. So we are working with them to work that out. The last point I wanted to make is if there was rental assistance paired with it, it would certainly be a more robust program. We recognize the legislature has limited funds and many people want it. So what we're looking at is if this bill is passed, and I hope it is because there is a huge need, that we would go to private foundations, ideally Hawaii Community Foundation, to see if they would set up a rental assistance fund for this specific program on Maui. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Realtors with comments.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Garcia from the Hawaii Realtors. So we appreciate the intent of this bill. We do note the AG's concerns. Just wanted to point out that this program is specific to tenants who are unable to pay rent. And so we echo what the Mediation Center has said in that, without emergency rent relief, which was actually part of the original pilot program that was run during COVID, it really does make the program less robust. Mediation process alone may not be able to help tenants whose sole issue is being unable to pay rent. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testimony we've received from individuals who indicated they would be present. In total, there were 16 individuals who submitted testimony in support and 3 with comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on this measure? Members, questions? All right, we'll move to the next measure, SB 3332, relating to eviction mediation. This measure proposes that beginning November 1, 2024, it extends the period for a notice of termination of a rental agreement, requires landlords to engage in mediation and delay filing an action for summary possession if a tenant schedules or attempts to schedule mediation, and requires landlords to provide specific information in the 10 calendar day notice to tenants. Judiciary, State of Hawaii, Mr. Crabtree, in support.
Thank you. I think judiciary is in strong support for the same reasons I gave on the last bill, so I won't add your time.
Thank you very much. Mediation Center of the Pacific, in support.
Good morning, Senators. We are in support. We stand in strong support with our testimony. I'd also like to add a couple points. First of all, since COVID, well, it hasn't really ended, but since things have reopened, the number of evictions have skyrocketed. So prior to COVID in 2019, the Mediation Center of the Pacific, just on Oahu, would receive approximately 470 cases. This last year in 2023, we received approximately 1,200. So we know those numbers are going up, so there needs to be something different to address it. My last point, I know there's a concern, and again, about the pairing it with rental assistance, but the Mediation Center of the Pacific, because of the success of the Act 57 program through private funding, last year we continued to offer early mediation to keep that continuity going. And even though it wasn't mandatory, so not everybody was going to embrace it, we did mediate with 119 tenants and landlords. That's before they went to court. And there was a 67% rate of agreement. So that's without the robust rental assistance. So there is still a good outcome from having an early program. And it's really trying to create a culture of getting landlords and tenants to talk early, as opposed to waiting, and then the tenant is so buried, there's no way they can come up with a payment plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Appleseed with comments. Good morning.
Morning. Arjuna Haim with Hawaii Appleseed. We stand on our comments and also would urge that a rent relief fund is included in this. As you've heard previously, it was a key thing in keeping people housed during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022, we published a report that looked at pre-Act 57 tenants and landlords that went through mediation, and 89% of tenants left their property. During Act 57, only 15% of tenants left the property, and that was when mediation was mandatory, as well as rent relief was attached. Post-Act 57, when it was no longer mandatory, we were losing rent relief funds. Only 80% of tenants, 80% of tenants left their properties after mediation services. So we believe that having rent relief is absolutely key to this bill in order to, if the purpose is to keep tenants housed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catholic Charities Hawaii, in support.
Chair and Vice Chair, I'm Betty Lou Larson with Catholic Charities Hawaii. And I think one of the key problems of Hawaii is homelessness. So anything we can do to prevent homelessness is critical. Of course, people facing eviction are at high risk for homelessness. And it's not only the impact on the families, it's the impact on the community. About $30 million a year is needed to address the homeless costs, whether that's medical, just all the different things it's impacting. So it's not just a personal need, it's a community need to do this. So we do support this bill, but again, we ask for rent relief. We feel that really it has to solve the problem, both the tenant and the landlord. Both sides have to get something out of this. And really the landlords want the rent. I mean, that's what they're there for. And the tenants want to pay the rent so they can stay. So we feel that it is critical to have a rent relief program to really make it work. We're afraid that it'll just kick the can down the road. And it'll be more trauma for landlords and tenants, longer period before the eviction, which will happen anyway. And that would be really sad for both sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the registered live testimony we have on this measure. Is there anyone else who would like to testify?
Thank you. Standing on our comments, same comments as previous.
Hawaii Realtors, standing on comments. I don't believe we have you, so if you can just double check with the clerk at the conclusion of the hearing. Let's make sure you have your testimony on the record. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? Okay, members, questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the next measure, SB 2863, relating to public monies. This measure requires that a portion of state monies be deposited in a state-owned bank. Takes effect after a state-owned bank is established. DCCA Division of Financial Institutions offering comments. Good morning.
Good morning. Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. So we would just like to offer some comments to clarify the language. Our amendments are offered on page 1, lines 9 through 12. And I would be happy to answer any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments, and the Hawaii Bankers Association in opposition. Thank you for standing on your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Members' questions? All right, we'll move to the last measure on the agenda, SB 3170, relating to timeshare commissioners of deeds. First up, we have the Sylvia Luke is registered to testify for the Office of the Lieutenant Governor in support on this one.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee.
Good morning.
Michelle Kurihara-Klein on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. You have our written testimony in strong support of this measure, and we'll stand on our testimony, but be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We also have written testimony submitted from Justin Vermuth of ARDA Hawaii in support. Is there anyone else?
Chair, I go to on behalf of ARDA standing in support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony. It's so noted in the record. Is there anyone else who would like to testify?
Sorry, just like a flash from the past.
Any questions, members?
I mean, I'm just having a flashback. Did we set this up for the cruise ship thing, right? Back in the day? Is that why the Commissioner of Deeds was set up to begin with?
Yeah, I think
Well, why don't you come up and then, Angus, if you can read your question into the mic one more time.
Oh, yes, sorry. No, just a flashback there to days gone by of we set up the Commissioner of Deeds for cruise ships, for timeshare sales on cruise ships, right? To be able to certify the, isn't that right?
correct.
DCCA
Yeah,
director?
it was for out of state or out of country.
Yeah. So they don't do that anymore? There's no timeshare
there's
sales?
there's another way to do it. They do the online notary.
Okay.
So it's not needed anymore.
Another legacy item?
That predated me, so.
No, I know, it was me. I helped set that thing up. That's why I just was like, wait, I remember this. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we will recess for decision making. All right, reconvening on our 9:40 a.m. February 7th, 2024 CPN agenda in room 229 to vote on the following measures. The first is SB 3229 relating to insurance. The recommendation on this measure is to keep the working group established in the measure, remove the remaining parts of the measure, and insert Part 3 from SB 3230, which was heard earlier, which essentially extends out the additional living expenses period that already exists in policies, subject to the other provision limits in existing policies. We also defect the effective date on this measure to July 1, 2040 to keep this specific issue moving in the legislature. Any discussion?
No, I want to just thank you so much for inserting that in there. People in Haina, this is really going to be a sign of relief. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, Vice Chair, SB 3229 passing with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Senator McKelvey?
Yes.
Senator Richards?
Aye.
Senator Awa is excused. Measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next measure is SB 2913 relating to travel insurance. The recommendation on this measure is to pass with amendments. We will accept the amendments proposed by the DCCA in their testimony. There are some technical non-substantive amendments, and we will defect the effective date to July 1, 2040. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, passing with amendments, chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Of the members present, any voting with reservations or objections? Hearing none, measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. The next measure is SB 3337 relating to appraisal management companies. This committee has already taken action on a duplicate measure, so we're going to defer this. The next measure is SB 3331 relating to landlord-tenant code. The recommendation is going to be to insert the contents of this measure into the following measure to cure the title problems articulated in the Attorney General's testimony. So we're going to defer this measure. So for SB 3332 relating to eviction mediation, the recommendations are as follows. We will when I find them. Okay, we'll pass with amendments, insert the contents of SB 3331 to cure the title concerns. We will adopt the Attorney General's recommended amendments to those provisions, of which there were a bunch, at least 5. We will adopt the amendments requested by the Department of Human Services regarding attorney fees to both sections in the bill. We will adopt the recommended, and we will adopt the recommended amendments of the Hawaii Realtors, Appleseed, and the other testifiers who requested an insertion of the rent relief program. We'll adopt all of the other associated recommended amendments from the Attorney General's office. There are also some technical amendments, and we'll defect the effective date to July 1, 2040. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, passing with amendments, chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Of the members present, any voting with reservations or objections? Hearing none, measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. The next measure is SB 2863 relating to public monies. This is the state bank bill. The recommendation is to pass with amendments. We will adopt the recommended amendments from the DCCA Division of Financial Institutions and defect the effective date of the measure to July 1, 2040. Any discussion? Seeing none, passing with amendments, chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Of the members present, any voting with reservations or objections? Hearing none, measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. The last measure is SB 3170 relating to timeshare commissioners of deeds. Recommendation is to pass this measure out with a defective effective date of July 1, 2040. Any discussion? Seeing none, passing with amendments, chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Of the members present, any voting with reservations or objections? Hearing none, measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned.